Listeners, I have big news. I wanted to let you know that I have launched the Golf Guru app, and it's in the Apple App Store this week. I'm very excited about the opportunity to create an unparalleled online academy experience for my students, whether they see me consistently in person or not consistently enough, or for those new students who aren't local but want an affordable and an effective online training experience. So let's talk about what the app will include. First, the app will have a Facebook-like forum where I'll be sharing more than ever from my day-to-day experiences with students and other top teaching colleagues. In addition, the Golf Guru app subscribers will be able to share their thoughts, experiences, and questions. I'll also provide access to my library of lessons and drills, which will be added over time, all easily filterable and watchable anytime, anywhere. And the cool thing is students can also film, save, and categorize their lessons and their swings in the Golf Guru app. Lastly, app subscribers will receive a personal one-on-one lesson with me once per month, which can include swing analysis, prescriptive drills, and on-course performance tracking, thanks to my app partner, Swing U, the industry's #1 golf GPS and scorecard app, as well as the owner of the most comprehensive and engaging app platform in the world for golf instructors, clubs, and academies. I am super excited about this, so go check it out. Go to your app store, download the app, and I will see you on the other side where I help you with your golf game. Now let's get to this week's episode.
It's not what you know, it's what you can prove.
You know how to cut to the core of me, Baxter. You're so wise. But like a miniature Buddha covered in hair.
I want to become a guru so girls will like me. Then I will like myself.
Now, before we do this, let's go over the ground rules. Rule number 1. No touching of the hair or face.
Of course.
And that's it! Now let's do this!
Hello everyone, welcome to episode 65 of the Golf Guru Show. I am Jason Sutton, and I am the Guru. My guest today is one of the premier putting coaches in our industry, Mr. David Orr. David is the Director of Instruction at Campbell University and also works at Pine Needles Lodge and Golf Club in Pinehurst, North Carolina, where he hosts his Flat Stick Academy certification, which I would highly recommend for all you coaches to attend. You can also email him at orgolf@gmail.com. A little bit about David. He is a Golf Magazine Top 100 instructor and a Carolina's Section Teacher of the Year award winner in 2011, and has worked with countless PGA and LPGA Tour players, including Justin Rose, Hunter Mahan, and now Suzanne Pedersen and Cheyenne Woods. I have personally learned so much from David's coaching about putting over the years, as we have spent a lot of time together and have had a lot of phone conversations. So I am grateful for his friendship and also his willingness to share information that will make us all better. And this conversation is no different as we dive into all that is putting for coaches and players, as well as some very personal and extremely important topics like the importance of mental health and some valuable life lessons that David shares that you don't want to miss. So without further delay, I give you the brilliant and always entertaining Mr. David Orr. Enjoy. All right, Mr. Orr, thanks for coming on the show, man. Welcome to the Golf Guru Show, and I appreciate you taking the time. How you doing?
Doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome, man. I'm excited.
Yeah.
I've been trying to connect with you for a while, and it was nice to talk to you the other day on the phone, and real excited to kind of dig into some of the stuff you're doing.
Well, thanks for having me. It's a true blessing, and hope you're holding up okay in the heat out there teaching this week.
It's been warm, but yeah, lots of water and trying to stay hydrated and staying in the building as long as I can.
Yeah, I hear you. It's that time of year here in the Carolinas, but keep reminding myself that fall's not too far away.
Absolutely.
All right.
So take us back, man. I know you haven't always been a putting coach, and I'm excited to dig into all of that, but I'm not sure that everybody knows the backstory of kind of how you got into the game and how you started coaching and just give us some lineage to how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, so I grew up in upstate New York, north of Syracuse. So we had a golf season that was probably 4 months long, and didn't have a high school golf team. Played basketball and baseball, and so I went to a D3 school to play golf, Bridgewater College in Virginia, and it was good for me to go there because I hadn't had a lot of competitive experience as a junior golfer, and didn't have a resume built up. So it was good to play 3 years there, and obviously I transferred to Oswego State to get my degree up in upstate New York, and then also I've gone 2 years here at Campbell. So my big joke is I've gone 7 years of college, but not because I was smart. But yeah, I went to 3 different colleges, and I played the May tours right out of college. What was interesting is my very first professional event, I Monday qualified for a Ben Hogan Tour event, which was back then, I guess, the equivalent of the, well, it's not the web.com anymore, it's the Korn Ferry Tour.
Right.
What a sponsor, huh?
Yeah,
but,
it's hard to say.
Yeah, so, but, I chased that around a bit, and then I played all the different mini tours all over. I mean, I played the Powerbuilt Tour, the Hooters, TC Jordan, North Atlantic Tour, the Moonlight Tour. I think in 1993 or 4, I'd played in all 4 corners of the continent. And, I got into teaching as a way of making some money to pay for my entry fees and my travel. So I was kind of doing both for a little while. And the reason why I got into teaching is I was making more money than I was making cuts. So,
I've heard that story before.
Yeah. So I don't think I'm alone with that one. But
Yep.
What's ironic is, I've always had a great golf swing, and I've always hit the ball very well. And putting was my downfall. If I'd have putted better, I'd have, probably had a little more staying power out at playing. But that's my big joke is I tell all these good players I work with that come from all over the world that they're taking lessons from a guy that sucked at putting. So, but that's kind of what actually kind of got me into putting. I taught full swing for a long time. I've been teaching golf for going on my 28th year. Yeah, wow. And
You got me by a year, so I'm right there with you.
Yeah. So, but what's interesting is I got into doing some putting research at Campbell University with David Adele 12 years ago, and we presented some of that research on putter aim and different effects of different heads and hosels and lines and all that kind of stuff. Presented at MIT back in 2007, 2008. And I got really into studying putting strokes, obviously, with that as well. And then about 6 years ago, I started really studying the body, like specifically what both wrists do, what both forearms do, what both elbows do, what both arms do, etc. with Dr. Rob Neal.
Right.
And then I have been going all around the country, the world, speaking about those findings in 3D. And then obviously I taught on tour for 12 years, and then I probably wouldn't even be known at all if I didn't work for Justin Rose for 5 years. So, so that's just kind of a brief little bio. Been very fortunate to work with a lot of good players. As I mentioned, Justin Rose and Paul Casey and Hunter Mahan,
right,
and Trevor Immelman at time. Putting, the roster changes all the time.
Yeah, it's a revolving door, isn't it?
Yeah, much faster revolving door than the full swing guys.
Yeah.
But players come, players go. Some come back, some don't, and that's what Mike Shannon taught me several years ago with putting. Is that you're going to have a player work with them for a while, and then they go work with somebody else or whatever, and then they come back or whatever. So I've been very fortunate to have a lot of good players to work with, and not just on the PGA Tour, but the LPGA Tour. I work with Suzanne Pedersen and Anna Norquist, Cheyenne Woods, and Brittany Marchand. So my roster has reduced in size on purpose. As we had talked the other day,
Yeah.
I'm doing a little less travel on the tour, but still traveling the world, sharing the knowledge that I've learned with other coaches.
Yeah, it looks like every time I see on Facebook you're flying to France or somewhere across the world to do a speaking engagement. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate. I've been to Denmark twice, I've been to France twice, Germany 3 times, England twice, Scotland twice, Portugal, Amsterdam, or the Netherlands. So yeah, I've been very fortunate to be asked to come to these places. And one thing is to share information, but it's also another thing to experience new places, new friends, new food, and it's been great. So I couldn't have asked for a better life or career. My big joke is that golf's given me a life that I could never have afforded.
Yeah, that's what a lot of us can say for sure.
Yeah, so.
Well, that's cool, man. Let's dive back into the research. When I first, I think, encountered your stuff, it's been several years ago when you, I think, presented at Proponent Group on your findings that you did with David Adele. I think when you started doing your research, that's when I was like, man, this is so ahead of the curve. Nobody had ever really did that extensive of research with Sam Putt Lab, and then all the stuff you're doing. I guess what is it, GBB?
GBD with Rob
GBD
Neal,
with Rob Neal. So talk a little bit like from the beginning, because it's interesting to sort of lead up to now what is your Flat Stick Academy and your philosophy, or for lack of a better word. Like, how did you build that knowledge, and kind of what did you start with?
Well, it started with Billy McDonald of Henry Griffiths gave me a fit to aim putter fitting system, and I saw on the face it said Adele Design. I said, who's this Adele guy? And he hooked me up with David Adele, and David Adele came up to Campbell and brought a system and spoke to our kids. And then he said, hey, do you want to do some testing with the kids? Because we had 100, back then we had 180 kids in the program or whatever it was. Right. And, one of the cool things about being at a university, if you want to do some testing real fast, or you've got a good significant sample size. And that was one of the big jokes at their presentations. We always had over 100 people in our sample size,
yeah,
and
all the kids.
And other people are going, okay, we did a research project with 3 people, or they said, oh, we got 10 people in our sample, and
right,
and we're doing over 100. So that was how it got started. It started with head design and hosels and offset and line configurations in relation to putter aim. But what was interesting is I was fitting people with better putter aim, but their ability to square the face at impact wasn't necessarily improved. And as well as I do, trying to reduce the face change between address and impact is a fundamental in putting that we're trying to work on.
Absolutely.
And that's where when I started doing a lot of Sam Putt Lab research. I collected thousands upon thousands of strokes, and I noticed that nobody stroked it the same way. And I got invited out to the tour to start working with some of Andy Plummer and Mike Bennett's guys. Charlie Wee was probably one of my first, significant tour players, and we had some success. And
he could roll it, couldn't he?
Yeah, he's probably one of the best left-hand low putters I've ever seen. I started working with Troy Madison, Dean Wilson, and then I played a practice round, or I didn't play a practice round. Troy had played a practice round with Justin Rose, Brad Fax, and Gary Woodland. How about that foursome?
That's pretty good.
And walking around with Andy and Sean Foley, and that's how Sean got my phone number. And a year later, Justin Rose had called me the week of the U.S. Open at Olympic 2012, and our first lesson was literally a Skype lesson with a laptop on the floor, and I am giving him a lesson. And then after the U.S. Open, he invited me down to Lake Nona to work with him for a week, or not a week, but 3 or 4 days. And
right.
I thought that would be it, And then little did I know that, he said, how can we make this a more permanent deal? And he put me on retainer. And the following year he wins the U.S. Open, and that changes all of our lives. So, do
you remember the first thing you told him in that FaceTime lesson or Skype lesson?
Well, what was funny is we were going through different putters, and he had a tendency to be hooded and de-lofted, closed, twisted shut a little bit, and swung a little bit into out, a little push stroke. And he had all these different putters, and I was like, man, that Newport with that that longer neck or offset hosel, the plumber's neck.
Mm-hmm.
I said, that looked really good. And on the Sam Putt Lab the following week, it was a great putter. He goes, yeah, I like this putter, but he goes, I feel like I'm going to hit it left. And that's, that was the tendency of the offset.
Sure.
And so he had always gravitated toward a mallet, so he wouldn't hit it left. So he'd rather miss it right than miss it left. And so you'll see him nowadays. He tends to putt with mallets just because he doesn't like missing it left. But my big thing that I tell him, I said, yeah, but count the number of wins that you've had with mallets versus blades, and the blades have outnumbered the mallets. Although lately he's been, winning a lot with mallets. So it's just he had a fear of missing it left, and that's kind of how we got started. And he had kind of popped onto the scene there with that victory over Phil in the Ryder Cup, and like I said, when he won the U.S. Open in 2013, it changed all of our lives. Yeah,
so then you started digging a little bit more into, like you said, the body, and that's what I'm really curious about, because that's what we've discussed a lot, at PGA shows and on the phone. And like, what have you found to be sort of commonalities of the best putters that you work with, or just good putters in general? And I know you've said a lot in your talks that there's no perfect way to putt, and we understand that, but is there anything that sort of has influenced your philosophy and say, hey, I really enjoy this, or like I have a preference for this because of what you found?
Well, more for me, it's knowing what pieces go with what type of stroke pattern. So if you were to take a person that, kind of cuts across it with the face opening to the path through the ball, and path kind of exits to the left, we see a certain wrist sequence with the wrists. I call it under twisting. So if you were to look at kind of like Patrick Reed is somebody that kind of goes to the left and kind of under twists his wrist and kind of adding loft through the ball and turning it open a little bit. And then you take somebody that the opposite of that, somebody that might hook it or release it, like Tiger. Mm-hmm. So how these players use their wrist, forearms, elbows, and upper arms has kind of been my expertise and my studying. And we have 105 people in that sample, pretty good players like Rory, and got him in 3D when he was working with Phil Kenyon. Mm-hmm. You got Henrik Stenson, Tommy Fleetwood, Justin Rose, Hunter Mahan, John Senden, Cheyenne Woods, Suzanne Patterson. It's a pretty legit sample
it's pretty
of
strong.
Good players. It's pretty strong,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, okay, the big question is, how much more do I need to collect? Because once you collect the data, then you have to kind of sort through it and run some statistics and then start classifying things. And I'm like, for the last couple of years, I've just been just going through it, interpreting it, making sure what I'm interpreting is accurate, with Doc Neal and
mm-hmm.
and what we're seeing. And so that's been kind of cool. And like I said, my biggest thing, I've started with the wrists and then worked my way up with the forearms and the elbows, and now working how each arm relates to each other. So you got some players that putt with their trail side, like Tiger Woods, Zach Johnson, Henrik Stenson. You get Brandt Snedeker who putts with his wrist and forearm. Then you get some players that putt with both arms, like Ricky.
Right.
Ricky kind of putts with both arms. And then the only person that I've even seen that has close to what I would call a pure shoulder stroke would be Hunter Mahan.
Right.
But that's why
I've heard you talk about that. Yeah.
Well, that's why he looks so rigid, is he's trying to reduce all the degrees of freedom from everything else.
He's kind of locked up, right? So very connected looking.
Rigid, yeah. So that's what it looks like if you're trying to putt with just your shoulders or your torso. But there is also what's called shoulder rocking, which is kind of like Dean Wilson, or if you bend over a lot like Michelle Wee, you can start to rock the shoulders vertically too. So
sure.
But that's kind of how I work. I kind of look at how the player generates speed and moves and how they coordinate the movement, and then that's how we determine how to fix the direction, so to speak. So there isn't a right way to do it. It's just the player's way to do it, and is there ways they can do it better? Are there some pieces that are missing that we can add in there? And What's funny is you start working with a player's natural coordination, and you start teaching them how to use the club, and it starts to look pretty good pretty quick. And it's just when they're trying to do something that they're not comfortable with, that's when it looks bad. Or when they're thinking about trying to do something that's just completely foreign to them, they can look pretty bad pretty quick.
Yeah, it's interesting because we've talked about it a lot of the power sources, and I actually had an interesting conversation with Phil Kenyon, I think a couple of years ago, and when he was working with Rory, as a matter of fact, and I was asking him about what he was doing, and he was talking about sequence, and it's really the first time I've heard a putting coach, with him, and then you talk about like how the different parts move and the time they move and the order, right? So it's the torso or the right arm or the left arm or the wrist. I mean, I'm sure you've seen all of that. Is there a preference there at all, or what do you see most of the players doing? Because obviously the shoulder analogy thing is really a big deal that I've learned from you, because now I teach more of my guys to feel like they're putting with their upper arms or, their arms in general.
Lower arms.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. They look at you like you got three heads. Like, really, I'm not supposed to move my shoulders? I'm like, no, the shoulders will move in response to the power source that we decide on. So talk a little bit about that, maybe even like some different players and how they sequence.
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously Phil and I had done a lot of work together with Dr. Rob Neal, and that's how I got my Rory stuff. And sequencing is, in putting, ideally everything works synchronized. That would be the ideal thing, right? Mm-hmm. But the problem is not everybody has the face aimed at a dress, or they've got some type of movement. And here's the thing about putting is we're talking minutia here. We're talking really small values.
Sure.
The person let's just take the person that's adding lofted impact. Typically what we'll see them doing is pushing the club head down faster than their hands are moving. I mean, so they're kind of, their trail wrist is adding loft, right?
Mm-hmm, right.
Whereas like me, I have too much lag in my putting stroke, so the putter head's still going back in my transition as my hands start going forward.
Right, I'm that guy too.
Yeah, so and there's a reason for that too. I figured out why that works and why players do that. So, but in the ideal world, everything's working in sync, and the graphs would be pretty much almost simultaneous. But as far as sequencing, I think what Phil was talking about is, with Rory, he tends to use his chest a lot.
Right. He said torso, and then he would always flex that lead wrist and kind of shut the face, and then he'd be kind of that under twist block guy, right?
Yeah, and then the upper arm has to move away from the upper body so
Correct.
he doesn't pull it. So
yeah. And
Brad Faxon's his coach now, and Brad and I are pretty good friends and colleagues, and he knows I've got Rory's 3D, and I've said, yeah, this is what he tends to do, and it's just more about managing it than it is perfecting it. But getting back to sequences, it just depends. I mean, like I said, they're so small.
Sure.
And that's what the fun thing about what I do is, you've seen my before and afters on my Facebook. Mm-hmm. It's fun to work with these people and make them better, and they definitely look a lot different than they did when they came, but more importantly, it works. It's not just making it look pretty for a Facebook video before and after. They're actually putting better.
Sure.
And so we'll get into that real quick. So when do I change technique?
Perfect.
The only time I change technique is when a technique doesn't allow a player to be skillful. So let's take that under twister that's adding loft, right? And they're kind of hitting down and left on it. So they're not only are they opening the face, but they're adding loft, so they come up short and right. So that's when I would take a person and change, their pattern, so to speak, because they can't be skillful.
Right.
Now, if I've got
functional.
Yeah, but now if we took Billy Mayfair, who had a loop in a stroke, but he was functional and he was very good at when he putted with a loop in a stroke. I mean, Brooks Koepka has a loop in a stroke.
I was going to say, Brooks has got a big loop. Yeah.
Yeah, he loops. What Brooks does is he loops up.
Yeah.
So he kind of takes it a little bit low and maybe slightly in and loops up, and then, occasionally might hit a little pull or a little swipe across it. And, let's face facts. I mean, it's funny. There's a lot of good players that don't have perfect putting strokes.
Absolutely.
And then on the other hand, Brad Faxon, who had very little instruction, self-taught, I've gotten my own data of him on straight putts and right to left putts and left to right putts, and just by using good feedback, he developed a good putting stroke. So it's it's not about the stroke; it's about this whole thing of mindset and skill, and the stroke, knowing your stroke and knowing how to fix your stroke, and picking out a putter. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that go into this ecosystem that Philip likes to talk about. But I like I said, the only time I change a technique is when the technique's not allowing the player to be skillful.
Yeah, so let's dig into that a little bit. Is like when a new player comes to you, and we can call it. I mean, you can talk about an elite players or a tour player.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what does that look like? What's the structure of it? Because I know I like your 7 principles to your improved putting performance, and you touched on a couple there: the mental state, putting skills, stroke fundamentals. The shape of your putter, how they generate speed. Direction and improvement movement strategy. Like, is that sort of the structure, or sort of take us through like what that would look like with a new player?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I use the same template from tour player to beginner. So beginners are great as long as they've played a sport. So that's the first question I ask. And then I try to relate to them. Like, I had a tennis player the other day, and we talked about the green. Yes, talked a little about their putting, and I try to listen to their narrative first and their story, and then started having to hit some putts downhill, uphill, and I'd ask them about, okay, well, which way does this putt break? And they'll go, okay, it breaks to the left, and I'll say, why is that? And they'll say, because the green is sloped that way. I said, so the principle is slope, and they go, yeah, exactly, and I said, okay. And then I said, well, the green also has a certain speed to it, right? So it's stimp. So slope and stimp are the first 2 things that I introduce them to in the environment. And that's why I always outsource everybody to aim point, because the finger thingy is the slope, and the arm bend is the stimp. And so I start right off with assessing their green reading, their speed control. I ask them where they're aiming and seeing where they start the ball. And this is even with a beginner. I get them paying attention to the green and speed and where they intended to hit it. And then, probably with a beginner, as I don't measure their stroke, but I start teaching them about, okay, let's hit one with the putter de-lofted like Phil Mickelson. Okay, all right, now hit me one like Zach Johnson where we have loft. All right, and I said, oh, you've seen Steve Stricker, right? Show me, set up like Steve Stricker with the heel off the ground. Or I don't know if they remember Isao Aoki or
the
Fuzzy
opposite.
Zeller.
Toes way up.
Right, and I'll say, okay, where do you think neutral is? Okay, and then I'll do a twister drill where we work a little open, close, shut, open. So I've really kind of introduced them to the putter and how it works and moves. And then I start giving them some basics. I tell them, okay, ball starts on a line. We stand inside of a circle. From the center of the circle out to the circumference is a radius, and that's just a fancy word for the length of the putter and the length of my arms. So I'll have them bend over, make the putter really short, make their arms really bent, and hit one from there. And they'll say, okay, stand really tall and arms long, and stand real upright, and make the putter as long as you can, and hit it like that. And they'll say, okay, the vast majority of golfers look like what on TV? Straight arms or bent arms? And they'll go, well, slightly bent. I'm like, oh, good. And okay, now I want you slightly bent over too. And then we start to move this radius in a plane, and we make sure we try to keep the length of the putters in the length of the arms relatively the same. And then all of a sudden, their rules have changed from trying to move a putter straight back, straight through, or trying to arc it to, hey, we don't try to arc it. We don't try to move it straight back, straight through. We have a radius that's controlled by the length of the club, my arms, and my wrists. And we start to move that radius in a plane, and all of a sudden I've got a really easy-looking, easy-feeling putting stroke. And then I introduce the club face to them and say, okay.
Interesting.
So what's interesting about my approach is that I'm teaching these people actual principles of movement, and my players look so good, so fast, so quick, and they understand it and they can fix it. And that's my biggest thing that I focus on is, hey, when they're not away from me, they need to be able to fix this thing without me there.
Well, it sounds like you're just pushing them in both directions to sort of test each end of the spectrum, and then bringing them back to sort of neutral, right? So they can feel what that's brilliant, because it basically you're allowing them to almost build the skill on their own and sort of self-discover it.
Well, an even bigger thing, getting back to the brain thing. So Dr. Christian Marquardt, we both presented at a putt conference in Berlin last February. Yeah, I believe it was February. Maybe it was March. I can't remember. I've traveled so much. But no, it was in October. And we both presented there, and he talked about, because Christian's a neuroscientist,
right?
And he talked about the brain as a map. And he kind of used this big easel with, paper, the big paper sitting on the easel, and he says, we have to open up the map. So a lot of people are up in the upper left corner, they're just narrow-minded, and he says you got to go to the bottom right corner, the upper right corner, and the bottom left corner just to pull them toward the middle. And so when you're having these people go Stricker hands, Aoki hands, Mickelson hands, Zach Johnson hands, you're actually freeing up the brain to write new programs and freedom.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why I do it. So it's not just an activity of learning the club, but it's actually freeing up the mind to kind of draw a new movement program. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned, is that I'm trying to change people's concepts, belief systems, and get them to have different principles for movement. And like I said, that's why they look so good, so fast, so quick. So it's a lot of fun. And not everybody. I don't teach everybody the same pattern.
Sure.
Some of my players might go a little end out and hook it. Some of them might cut across it a little bit, but it's never more than like a degree and a half of hooking it or cutting it. But they're applying the principles correctly, and that's why they look good. You can see somebody when they don't look right is they're not applying principle very good. So like the player that's trying to keep the putter straight back, straight through, and low to the ground, the reason why they're wristy and armsy is because that's what you'd have to do with the radius to keep the club moving low to the ground.
Yep.
And my big joke with people is the putter's only low one time.
When he hits the ball.
No, not
before he
even
hits the ball.
Not even then. It's at low point. And low point is not always impact. So
yes.
So the putter's only low one time, and they look at me like, what? I said, this thing's a radius. I said, look at it swinging. Look at that clock. That clock only reaches 6 o'clock at one time. So they start to go, oh, so I don't try to keep the putter low. I'm like, no, that's bad advice. Nor do we want to hit down on a putt either. I mean,
exactly.
You don't want to hit down on a putt. I'm not saying that we need to hit up either. It's just a byproduct of the putter was at address on the ground. At impact, the hands are 7 to 8 millimeters higher, so we hit the middle of the equator of the ball. So there's been a rise of the putter at some point. Mm-hmm. And so that's what creates the rise angle. It's not trying to hit up on it or trying to hit down on it. It said if I've addressed the putter on the ground, if I returned it with no change in the radius, I would scuff the ground. So that's why you see a lot of players try the drill of hovering the putter. If they hovered the putter at address, then the low point would be at impact. So I was just actually working on some Capto stuff with that today because it shows low point so well. But so I teach my players basic principles of movement and teach them how to feel it and how to fix it, and it's a lot of fun. I mean, that's why I keep throwing those people up there. And I mean, I fixed some guys in remember the game show Name That Tune?
Yeah.
And they'd say I could name that tune in three notes or 2 notes.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I literally had in 1 week I had 2 guys. Did one in like 2 strokes. Complete transformation. Another guy in like 4 strokes. And I'm talking, these are average golfers. These aren't tour players.
Right.
And you can find them on my Facebook. You'll see them.
Oh yeah, I'm checking them out.
Yeah. So it's with the average golfer, there is certain tendencies. Okay. Right. I call it right hand throw. So they throw the club head ahead of the hands because they're just trying to generate speed and they're trying to guide the putter head. or right arm throw. So if you got the right wrist throwing the club head and the right arm straightening out, that right arm will actually pronate and internally rotate, and the club face closes down real quick. So they end up look like they're using the putter like a wand, trying to guide it into the hole.
Yeah, oh yeah, I see that.
So what's funny is I tell them it's a loft issue, and I said, okay, how would we maintain the loft of the club? And if the two forearms and the shaft form the letter Y, show me a stroke where you can maintain the Y. And boom, all of a sudden, wrist throw is gone or minimized, right arm throw is minimized. So, and they start to look pretty good. And they all of a sudden they have a sense of controlling the right hand and right arm as opposed to trying to eliminate the right hand and right arm, which I think is a huge mistake in putting instruction. Is, you hear it all the time from full swing instructors, is got to take your right hand out of that putting stroke. And it's like, if you took the right hand out of Tiger Woods' putting stroke, he wouldn't be able to make a putt.
Right.
If you took Zach Johnson's right arm away from him, he'd never make a putt. If you took Snedeker's hands out of the stroke, it would no longer be Sned's stroke. So it's training the hands and the wrists and the forearms and elbows what to do, as opposed to trying to do something that's maybe not a very effective movement pattern, which we saw with Ernie at Augusta on the first hole a couple years back.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so that's the right hand going the wrong direction. So, but so it's a lot of fun, whether it's a beginner golfer. I'm getting a lot of juniors lately. A lot of that's because I've been very fortunate, again, not just have good players on the tour, but also I teach number 1, number 2, number 3 players in the state of North Carolina, girls. And obviously when they're winning tournaments, then everybody else, the parents, start calling you and stuff. So it's like both of us. We've all been blessed with really good players, and I think that's our reputation is built on the number of players good players that we work with. But where we really get to shine is with the beginner golfer or the club golfer that was a 15 and all of a sudden they're a 5.
That's right.
Or a 4 or a 4.
They're telling your friends, and then you get real busy.
Yeah, and then and then if they get club fit for a driver, and they get a good full swing instructor, they pick up their 15, 20 yards and putt better. And that's what my friend Rich Hunt talks about all the time, is the power to putting principle. And we're seeing that with Koepka. The reason why Koepka is dominating is because of power and putting. And
definitely,
Dustin Johnson, same thing, power and putting. Rosie's picked up yardage, power and putting. Tiger is one of the rare players that's still a great iron player, and there's certain courses for horses, and there's certain courses that the iron player still will win. But I'm looking at these majors, and I'm just sitting here watching Koepka again, and it's just it's just him and DJ have learned to hit it far with a fade.
Yep.
And then they've got a wedge, sand wedge, 9-iron in their hand, and the rest of the field's got 6 irons and 5 irons in their hands, and it's just not a fair fight. And then you put that on top of that, both of them have improved their putting and wedge play, and it's just, it's about hitting it far. The new game is, how far can I hit it in play and find it? Can I hit my wedge or my short iron in there pretty close and make putts? And that's why these guys are doing what they're doing.
For sure. Who do you like to watch on tour now? Who do you think's got the best action in the putting stroke?
Oh, putting stroke?
Yeah. It's just
Let's talk golf swing first.
Yeah,
so
we
Rosie,
can.
Without question, Rosie. One of the things about Rosie and I worked with him for 5 years. I quit on him twice, and we'll talk a little bit about why that was, because we talked about that the other day, right?
Yeah, we'll save that for last.
We'll save that for last. So, but Rosie and I are still buds. Gosh, we FaceTime still like maybe once every month or two, and I went and walked 7 holes with him just to hang out with him at Wells Fargo and poke fun at him and all that kind of stuff. But we're still buds, even though we don't have a working relationship. But he still asks me questions. My phone still gets dinged with chip shots and wedge shots and stuff like that, because I did a lot more than putting with him. But
yeah,
golf swing wise, without question, Rosie. I really love the way Tiger's ball flight is It's got a different sound, and I'm glad to see him get his swing. I think it's actually better than it's ever been, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think so too.
Now, what's funny is you asked me about putting strokes. So Hunter Mahan asked me the same question during a practice round prior to me starting to work with him. And Hunter said to me, he goes, so whose stroke do you like the best? I said, well, it depends. I said, I like Tiger stroke for if somebody that works the putter open and closed.
Right.
I said, I like Lauren Roberts' stroke for somebody that works the kind of zero rotation shut open.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I kind of like your stroke, H. If I were to teach somebody a body stroke, and he looked at me funny, he goes, you like my stroke? I'm like, yeah. And then when I started working with him, I put him on Sam Putt Lab and showed him how good his stroke really was, and put him on 3D and showed him how he was very rare, that he had the least amount of degrees of freedom in pretty much almost all the wrists and all the arms and the elbows and the upper arms. And so that kind of built some confidence, and he went out and won Barclays in 2014 with basically a short game, believe it or not. So Mark Brody's the one that made me aware of that he was actually number one around the greens at Barclays, which Hunter Mahan, I mean, that's usually been his bugaboo. But
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, Luke Donald's got a pretty stroke. Faxon's got
Yeah.
a pretty stroke. I mean, Faxon's got the best grip ever. I mean, he's got the best set of hands on a putter I've ever seen.
It just looks good when he puts them on there, doesn't it?
Yeah, and what's fun is, you know, we all collect our footage and our data and stuff, and I've got my own personal Faxon collection, and you know, we've become buddies, and the great thing about it is when he comes up and we work together, it's not me teaching him, it's just us going back and forth, and I've gotten to understand a little bit what made him great and how he thinks about putting and his attitude, how that's his number one fundamental. And
I was going to say that his mental state has got to be his superpower. Would you not agree? I mean, I know his stroke is pretty money, but
he guards it like Fort Knox. He
Right.
guards his mind. He guards his mindset and attitude like Fort Knox. Nobody can crack him. I'm telling you, nobody can. And what's funny is he bought a Capto and he started measuring his stroke, and he goes, man, my stroke's not as good as yours. I'm like, yeah, but everybody wants your stroke.
Yeah.
So I told him, I said, you can't. I said, as a putting coach, you got to be careful. You got to protect what you know and protect what you do. So, but Brad is becoming a great putting coach. Is like he said to me, he goes, man, coaching putting's hard. I'm like, yeah, no kidding.
No kidding. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll tell a quick story to our listeners. 2013 PGA Championship, Oak Hill. We're walking down the back nine with Rosie and Torborn Olesen, and Sean Foley says to me, he goes, Dior, because Rosie misses the fairway, no big deal. Rosie misses a green, no big deal. Rosie misses a 4-footer, now that's a big deal, and that's your job, not mine. He started laughing.
Yeah.
And he was right. He was right, because coaching putting is very difficult.
Well, that's why you always ask me, like, are you still teaching full swing? Like, are you kidding me? I've got to eat.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
know, nobody.
So, yeah.
You got to talk them into taking a putting lesson to begin with, but then, you give a good putting lesson to a tour player, and they don't come back for 6 months because they think they got it.
Yeah. And like I said before, what you and John Graham and Rick Murphy and Mark Sweeney and all the aim point guys, what you guys are doing is really important. Is teaching these people how to read a green and doing some skill work, and that's what the average golfer and even good golfers need. I mean,
sure.
They need to be able to read greens better. And Brad asked me that one time. He goes, "What do you think about our ability to read greens?" I say, "Some guys can read them pretty good, and some don't, not so good." So
yeah,
even at the tour level. And he goes, "Well, what about me?" I said, "Fax, you know how to read your putts." So he was great. But Jason, I've been so fortunate not only to just travel the world, but just to be around great people and learn from the best. And I think that's one of the things that's helped me personally grow as a coach is, working with good players. The more you work with them, and the more you work with, the more versatile and different they are. It makes me a better coach. So it's like it's like a win-win, or you're growing together. And
absolutely.
And I just got back working with Suzanne Pedersen. She had her baby boy Herman last year, and she says, I hadn't touched the club in 8 years, and I fly down to Bay Hill and we do some work, and I started watching her putt, and I'm like, holy cow, this looks good. And she goes, yeah, I haven't touched the club, but I've been going over our notes, and I made a book out of all of our lessons and all of our videos. And she showed me her book. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I mean, we only worked on her putting for 25 minutes because she had it down. She had it down, And she goes, yeah, my putting is my strength now, not my weakness. So that's kind of cool. You know what I mean?
It's. I always tell my first time clients, or especially the tour guys, it's like it's not necessarily making a lot of changes. It's helping you to understand your stroke. What are your tendencies, right? I mean, what happens when things go wrong, and then how do you get it back on track? So it's amazing how even the high level players, like you've worked with and many tour guys that I get all the time, it's like they can't read greens. They kind of ball strike their way around and they get away with it, or maybe they get a lucky day where every ball's below the hole 30 degrees up and they have a good putting day. But handling those difficult situations where the environment changes a lot, everybody needs to know that.
Well, your listeners won't believe this, but I've been very fortunate. I've worked with 3 players in top 25 in the world, 2 in top 10. Okay, and Hunter Mahan was 22nd in the world, always a top 30 putter, and his weakest skill was green reading, and that's when we got his caddy back then, John Wood, who's now with Kuchar, into aim point. And Hunter started doing aim point, and it really improved his green reading, but also his short game in general, and his placement of his irons. So, I mean, here's a guy that's top 25 in the world, that needed help reading greens better. So it's just letting them know what they need to work on and what are the and where to get that help. So, it's been great. Been very fortunate. I mean, I still pinch myself. 2 Ryder Cuppers. I mean. 3 Ryder Cuppers. I've had 3 Ryder Cup players. So one of it was Justin and Hunter played against each other.
Oh wow, how hard was that?
Oh, that was a hard one.
That was a hard day, isn't it?
I was on payroll with both of them. So yeah, that was a hard one. So, but no, I mean, I never would have thought I'd worked with 3 Ryder Cup players, and I mean, it's just amazing. And then obviously all the other players that I've worked with, and I get a lot of juniors, and everybody wants to hear the tour stories, but
sure.
I've got some juniors right now I've got one right now that's been number 1 in the world a couple times, and the questions are, is this kid going to go to college or not? Do you know what I mean? I'm just sitting here going, wait a minute, I'm talking to a kid that potentially might not go to college.
There's a good chance he's not going to college.
There's probably, he's really good. And, he's 13. He plays in the 15 to 18-year-old groups all around the world. And I've got so many good girls. I mean, like we said, 1, 2, 3 here in North Carolina. One's committed to Wake. One's committed to Virginia. One's committed to North Carolina. And, when I was teaching full swing, I didn't get texts, hey, I won today. Or, hey, thanks for helping me win. Full swing, that never happened. But it's almost on a weekly or bi-weekly or twice, every other week. People are saying, hey, thanks for helping me qualify for the USAM, or thanks for helping me, win the North Carolina Junior or the U.S. Kids Championship or whatever.
Sure.
It's just so rewarding to change people's lives, and that's big, and they changed my life. That's the cool thing about it.
So let's talk about technology a little bit, because I know you're big on Capto now, and you're using PuttView. Like, at what point do you put them on PuttLab or put them on Capto, and how much do you share with them? Like, take us through that maybe the last half of the lesson where you're maybe helping them understand, their stroke and their tendencies and make it come to life.
Yeah, so I measure them, almost everybody, if they're a good player, on Sam PuttLab, indoors, flat surface first, and then understand their pattern, or if I'm going to putter fit them, I'll use Sam PuttLab. But then I use Capto outside in the environment to see how they adapt to that pattern. So that pattern, the outdoors, might not look exactly the same by the numbers.
Right.
But, you're looking to see how they, you already mentioned it, how does that uphill right to left 30-degree stroke look like versus that downhill left to right from, say, 60 degrees look like?
Completely different.
Well, I wouldn't say completely different, like switching from out to in versus in to out.
No, but like aim bias or the way they manage, the way they problem solve definitely changes, I've seen.
Absolutely. So I use Capto outdoors for more is how they, work in the environment. And then the cool thing about Capto is, I first used it before it really got out on the market because one of my flat stick instructors, Sergio Piscinetti from Italy, had me using it when it first came out, and I hated it. When I first got Capto, I hated it. But Luca and his wife Francesca, man, one thing's for sure, they're always updating. And when you ask for something, eventually you're going to get it. And I made a post last night on Facebook that, hey, live mode on Capto is just amazing.
I saw that.
I mean,
yeah.
Oh, dude, you're sitting there and you can watch the putter rotate shut, open, closed, the lie angle change. I mean, what a great teaching tool to go live. So it's
I've definitely got to get one. I've been dragging my feet.
Well, I've got 3 of them. So, and what's interesting is when I spoke in France to the French PGA in Normandy, Boris Pansart with Well Putt built this 30-foot long, 8-foot wide putting group surface, like what like Rob Gibb makes, but just a 30-footer.
Mm-hmm.
And they had me give live lessons. I had to give, I think, 6 live lessons with technology on. So they're watching you, and you can't fake it.
There's no there's no getting out of that room.
No, because they can see the number. They can see the numbers,
Yep.
And what's funny is I was just so excited because I used Sam Putt Lab and Capto in front of the group, and I was 6 for 6. I nailed it out of Fenway 6 out of 6 times, and the technology when they watch you use the technology, that it sells themselves. I mean, I can't tell you how many Sam Putt Labs I've sold for Sam Putt Lab just in demos, and obviously Captos. I mean,
sure.
And so I use them. People ask me which one's better. It's not a question of better. They're different technologies, and I use them in different ways. So as far as Putt View is an amazing thing I use for targeting to figure out whether a player uses an entry point, a curved aim ideal line, an aim line, or an aim point. So you're basically teaching them putt geometry.
Sure.
And I test it right to left and left to right. And, I have it on my platform, but the best way to use Putt View is to actually have a complete indoor putting green that has slope and stuff like that, and then have multiple units.
It's amazing.
Yeah, so I use Putt View, and I love those boys from Germany. They've been good to me, and it's expensive, but like I said, it has its place. And then obviously, I have True Spec putter fitting, which I have 53 different heads, and I got 14 different grips and all these different multiple length shafts. I mean, we just added a 32, a 31, and a 30-inch shaft in my fitting system, so that I can actually fit juniors and fit ladies and fit people with really long arms. So yeah, to sit there and go, hey, I can fit from 30 inches to 36 inches. I can do that. So I've gotten all the right tools. And if you look at the template, there's a tool for each template. How about that?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I've done is there's a tool for each template to measure each thing. So, and yes, I do have some brain measurement stuff, but I don't even want to go there right now.
Yeah,
because we have been doing some brain mapping on right to left and left to right putts, and the brain is different. It's pretty interesting. So, but that's going to come within the next 5-10 years. You'll see that.
All right.
And So we ready to talk about personal stuff, or what are we ready to talk about now?
Yeah, let's go for it, man. I mean, because I thought it was interesting, our conversation the other day, and I'm super happy for you. And you shared with me a little bit about your health and that you're a lot healthier now, physically and mentally. So how did that kind of start? So take us back to the beginning for that, because we're all used to, and everybody that knows you like from afar is used to you, that high energy kind of manic, crazy guy on stage, and we love that. But I'm really digging this kind of chill, even keeled guy as well. So take us through that story, and thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. So basically, I got diagnosed as being bipolar 2, hypomanic, and I've always known that there was something different. Um, and I didn't realize that it was like a beast that was driving me. You've seen all my research, you've seen me speak,
Right.
and what I didn't realize was that I had an imbalance, and my imbalance was not toward depression, but the complete opposite, towards being manic and borderline psychotic, which everybody kind of knows.
Yeah.
And but what's funny is it's the beast that's both the blessing and the curse. So
Right.
The blessing is what it gave me: a high engine, high motor, a lot of energy. Stay up all hours of the night, do Excel spreadsheets one after the other, and it kind of made me successful. But it also destroyed relationships that I didn't realize. I didn't realize that what was making me great was also what was destroying relationships. So things kind of came to a head personally with my family, first and foremost. My daughters from my first marriage, I basically didn't have a relationship with my oldest daughter because of it. And obviously I went through one marriage and almost through a second marriage, and finally realized that, hey, this is something I've been neglecting my whole life, and needed to do something about it. And the biggest thing that I learned, and I'm not ashamed to talk about mental illness at all, especially being bipolar, it's genetic.
Right.
So
Yeah,
I
think that's
didn't,
important, right? To know that.
that's the first realization people need to know is, look,
Yeah.
I didn't choose this. My brother has a form of it. My father had a form of it. My grandfather had a form of it. The only thing is, my brother, he uses exercise and diet to manage his, and some light medication, but I tackled mine head on, obviously, also with getting the right medication. So that'd be the second thing to understand, is that it's a chemical imbalance, that it's nothing I could have fixed on my own. I can manage it, right?
Right.
But I had to get the right medication. What's interesting is I was misdiagnosed in college.
Yeah, I was going to say
as
it started a long time ago, right? It wasn't just
Yeah.
recent, but talk about
No.
that, and then the episode that sort of triggered it to
Yeah,
allow you to
absolutely.
get help.
Absolutely. So, and I'm not ashamed to share this with you. So my mom actually and I have talked a lot. She goes, "Boy, you were this way when you were a kid. I just didn't understand it." And when I got to college, I had an episode, and I went to a hospital, and they put me on antidepressants because they thought I was depressed, and
Oh
I
my
wasn't.
gosh. The
Yeah,
opposite
so
of what you needed.
That was the opposite of what I needed, and I kind of knew that instinctively, and I stopped taking medication, and that's why I went unmedicated for like 50 years, because I would just self-medicate, whatever it was. But so jumping from college to I went to Denmark, and I hadn't gotten much sleep, and sleep is something that's very important for somebody that's struggling with bipolar. And so it basically made me very manic, and I went into a manic episode that lasted for several weeks, and went to a hospital. The host family in Denmark said, "We're taking you to the hospital," and I said, "I don't need to go to the hospital." And they go, "You haven't sleeping or eaten in a couple days." And they took me to a hospital in Denmark, and they sent me to a psychiatrist, and he basically gave me a choice. He goes, "I can admit you and strap you down for 5 days, or you can take this medication that's the best in the world for what your problem is, but I can only give you enough pills to get out of the country." So I chose to take what's called Seroquel, which is an antipsychotic, and it put 25 milligrams, put me night right away, and 50 milligrams made the world start spinning. And I gave probably the greatest presentation I've ever given for the first time on medication, being balanced. I was on point. I was calm. I wasn't swearing at anybody. There were no swear words in my presentation.
No clubs thrown, or when people ask you about the pendulum stroke.
No, nothing. And what was amazing, it was the most heartfelt, and I touched people's lives when I spoke to them, and I finished on point, and I stayed on point, and I was like, wow, if I can keep doing this healthy, what's my career going to look like healthy,
Yeah.
And then what's interesting is and I got it back from Denmark, I only had one pill left, and my mother desperately got me to a doctor, and so I could leave the next day for the PGA of Alberta, and I gave a killer presentation up there in front of 140 golf pros. And so, yeah, I haven't had any swear words in 2019.
That's incredible.
In my presentations, because you guys know I can drop F-bombs faster than Pearl Harbor. So, but no, it's been. I'm not ashamed to talk about it at all. Matter of fact, if we got any listeners out there that, one thing I know statistically is that in America, it's almost 1 out of 2 people have some type of mental disorder or illness or whatever, and of those 50% or whatever that are untreated, 75% are untreated. I mean, of those 50%. I guess what I'm trying to say is of the 50%, 75% are untreated with anything at all.
So what advice would you give to somebody that maybe thinks they have it, or a friend that knows they have it? Like, what steps would they take? Is there a number to call, or is...
I don't know. I don't know about that. Here's what I would do. Find out your family history, number one. Okay, find out your family's mental health history, number one. Number two, on both sides. Number two, people that are closest to you kind of know something's off.
Right.
You know what I mean?
If they love you, they will probably ask questions.
How about my oldest daughter, who now I have a great relationship with after 10 years, and she said to my ex-wife, she goes, Dad's healthy.
That's awesome. That's
the most amazing thing I've ever heard.
I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah, and so the people closest to you, and then, I did a couple things. I'll just give you what I did. Family history. I went and got professional help rather than just like off the internet.
Sure.
I got several different opinions too. I didn't just stay with the first guy. I've had several. I formed a team, not just a psychiatrist, but a psychotherapist, a mental performance coach, a pastor, and a priest. So I've got a team of people that I had to talk through problems, because for me it wasn't just the chemical, but I needed a heart change.
Sure. And
then so obviously the medication, and then for the brain, but for me a heart change was dedicating my life back to Christ and building stronger faith.
That's
and
great.
getting my heart right. So my mantra is the 4 pillars of health is being spiritually healthy, being mentally healthy, being emotionally healthy, and physically healthy. Obviously, I've lost some weight, got a new clothing line, Johnny O, and so and my mom jokes that my clothing line now, Johnny O is a company that's kind of California casual cool.
Yeah.
And you wear your Chuck Taylors and your Jack Purcells, and she goes, now your clothing line matches your new personality. And
I love it.
And so it's it's been great. It's different. It's because I don't really notice the change because I'm living it day by day. But when Amanda Soundbach, she took a lesson from me when I was in a full manic episode, and I basically made her cry because I told her she wasn't practicing enough, and she wanted to be the best player in the state. Or I said, you don't practice enough, and and then she takes a lesson from me like a couple weeks ago, and she's like, "Whoa, you're chill." So
I just saw her today actually, and I told her that you're doing great, and she was like really, really excited for you.
Yeah. Well, what's funny here's what's interesting is that you find out who your friends are.
Absolutely.
And you find out also how people as your clients value you. I mean, I cannot tell you how many just personal conversations, not just about my health, but my clients and their life and in general. And my relationships are the number one thing that's improved through all this. And that's what we do. We teach people not just golf. And,
absolutely.
And building those relationships and being a good example. And even though people thought it was comical and they respected how smart I was and they liked to hear me speak, I mean that fire and passion's still in there.
Yes.
It just comes out in a much better way.
Yeah, it's fair to say this is the real you. This is your true self.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it.
Yeah, so it's been, like I said, my last two presentations have been healthy. And, I'm going to speak at the Golf Magazine Top 100 Summit in November, and I'm going to speak. I'll have other speaking gigs, so it's pretty interesting to see where this goes. I feel like my best part of my life and my career is ahead of me, and I'm so grateful that I had to go through some trials and tribulations, and that the good Lord just really saved my life, saved my mind, and changed my heart. And that's kind of my story, to be honest with you, is that, I was on top, but I was not healthy.
Yeah.
And you can fall off that top very fast.
That's very well said. Success is no fun without being able to share it with your family and with your friends in the proper way, is it?
Well, and that's the thing I learned about being bipolar, is it makes you self-centered and puts you in a bubble. Your favorite place is being isolated away from everybody. And that's why I did all the research, you know what I mean? As
right.
I'd just go get in my bubble and, be up there for hours and hours and hours, but you're missing out on life, and you're missing out on people and their lives. So I'm really grateful. And, by no means am I a saint. I'm not ready to be, put in the Catholic Church and a statue made of me and people praying after me. By no means I'm a sinner, let me tell you. But I am.
We all are, brother.
I am grateful I am grateful though that I had to go through this difficult time.
Yeah, so
and that's.
I'm not going to ask you the big failure question, because you've already answered. No, just the failure that leads you to later success question that we always ask, because you've definitely stated that very, very eloquently. I thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like I said, if there's people out there that somebody that's in your family, or you are struggling, and, you're struggling with your thought life, and, out of our heart comes our thoughts. And, sometimes you got to fix the brain and the mind, and sometimes you got to change your heart. And that's what I figured out. So
absolutely. All right, cool. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so let's transition a little bit and help some of the young coaches out there, right? So sounds like you're on your last year as being the guy at Campbell that's, helping all the interns and the PGM students. And I'm sure, you've had so many interns that have gone on to do great things, because I've actually had a few work for me. And so what advice are you giving the young PGM kids that say they want to come out of school and be coaches?
Yeah, so I've been at Campbell 15 years. This will be my last semester this fall. It was a very difficult decision for me to make, because of obviously the pedigree and the history that has come out of Campbell PGA Golf Management. I'll never forget Wells Fargo, walking on inside the ropes with TJ Eaton, and we looked down and see Jorge Parada, and my big joke was, wow, we've had 3 PGM coaches that are PGA Tour credentialed instructors, and we've had so many other ones like Ben Powell that are good players. And so the things that I tell the kids that are in the golf management is, hey, all right, you got to do your schoolwork, you got to do your PGA work, but figure out what you want to specialize in. And at Campbell, we specialized in putting, not just putting, but full swing instruction in general, or playing, and being a good player. I think being a good PGA professional still need to be a good player. That's just, I'm old school like that. But, we emphasized playing, teaching, growing yourself in a specialization, and then we had built a culture here. We had built,
absolutely.
Early on, we taught the kids golfing machine and Morad or McElgrady's concepts, and we'd look at different swing philosophies. And I always tell the kids, don't try to stick with just one philosophy, start to understand all of them. And we actually have a wonderful library of books here at Campbell University. How many universities have a couple hundred golf instruction books in their library?
What are some of your favorites there? Do you have any come to mind?
Well, obviously anything of Michael Hebron was great, because I worked for Michael for a year, and then obviously the golfing machine, I had all 7 editions. But there's lots of different topics, from mental to full swing to short game or exercise or whatever. But and Ryan Daly, founder of Op 36 and iGrow Golf, I mean, he was still is a colleague and friend, and Matt Reagan. They, a lot of great things have come out of Buies Creek.
Yeah.
You're talking the top junior program in the world.
Those guys are killing it. We were the first country club to adopt it. Now I couldn't be more proud of those dudes.
Yeah. So here's what's funny is you look at little old Buies Creek, and you've got the top junior program in the world, and then I've had some of the best players in the world fly private jets into Harnett Jetport and have been at Keith Hills and have stayed at my house. I look at my house and go, oh my gosh, Trevor Immelman stayed here, Justin Rose has stayed here, Hunter Mahan has stayed here, Cheyenne Woods has stayed here several times. It's just DA Points. I mean, Scott Stallings. I mean, there's so many people that have stayed at our home. And if this house could talk, but
right.
but the program itself, I mean, the industry's struggling. I think it's oversaturated with golf pros, and that's why I tell our kids, you got to be the best.
That's right.
And a lot of our interns work at, Rick Hartman up at Atlantic has hired over 20 of our interns, and Daryl Kestner at Deepdale has hired numerous of our interns, and so a lot of our interns are getting some of the best jobs and being. One of the things that my friend Keith Stewart always said to me, he goes, your net worth is your network. And we emphasize networking at the PGM school here at Campbell is being it's not what course you work at, it's who you work for.
Right.
And I got in an argument with one of my students when he was a freshman because he did his internship in the TPC organization, which is a great organization. And, he was going to be TPC his whole way through. And I was like, no, you need to go work at a private club. You need to go work under this guy, or you need to go work at a public course or resort to get this on your resume. And he argued with me. And then when he graduated, he got a job working at a high-end club, not at TPC. And he goes, Mr. Orr, I'm sorry. He goes, but you were right. And I said, yeah, it's your network. Your network is your net worth, man. Who you know and who you learn under, that's going to be a huge influence on how much you make.
Absolutely.
And my career is a perfect example of that. I mean, how can a guy make $60,000 a year in Buies Creek, and then how does he make six figures a year in Buies Creek? And then obviously moving on to Pine Needles, they actually asked me to come back there. That was an interesting conversation. Kelly Miller and the family, Mrs. Bell had passed away, and Donna and Pat do such a good job with the golf schools, but they wanted to have a name. They wanted to have a world-renowned instructor, and Kelly called me up and he said, hey, would you like to come back to Pine Needles? And I'm like, no. I said, are you kidding me? I don't want to teach all those schools. He goes, no. He goes, why don't you just make this your home base? You come and go as you please. We love the fact that you're traveling all over the world and that you're bringing tour players here and you're putting hotel guests in the lodge, and they're getting a wonderful experience. And that was the biggest reason why I went back to Pine Needles, was not only of my providing world-class instruction, but a world-class experience. And that's what I learned from Mrs. Bell the first time and the family, is that, when you, like, my most popular package is a 3-hour package for $750, but includes a room.
Okay.
And so my students come in, they either come in the day before and practice. We got Titleist practice balls on the range. They use four-hole loop, either play Pine Needles or Mid Pines, and they spend the night, and next day I greet them and work with them. So it was a win-win situation for us both, because I wanted to provide a world-class experience to go along with the world-class information.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And,
yeah, for sure.
As much as I love Buies
Smart.
Creek, it wasn't going to provide me a hotel or lodge, a restaurant, a bar, and being down in Pinehurst, even though it's hot as Hades, it might be hotter than hell, to be honest with you, down there with the sand, but the sand base. But it's a destination place, so it's been a really good situation for me. I still live up in Buies Creek. It's a 47-mile commute, and I've got my two little toys that I drive. I've got a BMW and an Audi, and I kind of just zing it down there and give my few lessons and enjoy it. And go up into the bar area and get my lemon with water because I'm not allowed to drink anything anymore, and come home. And Jason, I told you before. I mean, I just have been so blessed. Kid from upstate New York that wasn't really a great golfer, but I've been so fortunate to be working with good players and be an influence on students and future teachers. And I told TJ Eaton, and I said, you better be a better teacher than me by the time you're my age, because you'll know more.
Exactly.
And I gave them a lot of a head start that they didn't have to go down certain rabbit holes to learn. So
yeah,
and it's so flattering or humbling for me to call, TJ up or Jorge up and say, hey, what do you think of this swing or this swing thoughts? Or it's like I'm asking them questions now that they used to ask me.
It's come full circle.
It sure has.
It
sure has. And
yeah.
And I mean, you've been mentored you've mentored a lot of people as well. But
well, you've been a blessing to so many people. I mean, I think it's undervalued. I think how many you've influenced over the years, and I'm one of them. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate that.
I appreciate it, and we all share. And that's the biggest thing too that I've learned about information is, maybe you figured some things out, but you got to share it with others. You can't live on an island and say that you know everything, because you don't. And the more and more I've learned, the more questions I have, and realized back when I was that young, cocky, manic, bipolar instructor, I didn't know it all. But here's the thing that I noticed that Sean Foley has. I call it the Foley factor, and that Matt Killen has, or Cameron McCormick, or all these great coaches, Butch Harmon. There's a difference between being a great coach and being a know-it-all teacher. And you can know everything there is to know and not be able to communicate, not have a relationship. But they all have that believability.
Absolutely.
Like when Sean speaks, I mean, he'll make you believe. Even, he'll tell you that the sky is pink. And after a while, you'll start going, maybe it is pink.
Yeah, exactly. He's great.
But he is probably, I told Foley this. We talked for an hour probably last week, and I said, Foles. He says, yeah. He goes, once Rosie got to number one, things have gotten tough, and I've got this player and that player. And I said, dude, don't drift too far away from what made you great. And he said to me, he goes, I needed to hear that. I said, well, whether you needed to hear it or not, that's what you need to know, is don't drift too far away from what made you great.
Yeah.
Same thing with, and I'd say that to you. We all have our gift. I think my gift, I mean, I can help people technically, and I think my real gift is speaking. I mean,
yes,
when I
agree.
When I get in a room, I mean, most people are bored at these conferences, and I mean, I can speak in Denmark. They wanted me to speak more. I spoke 8 hours one day and 6 the next day, and I couldn't go 2 more hours of it. I mean, how many people can sit 14 hours in a conference listening about putting?
Yeah, and keep their attention.
And keep their attention. So I think and I had a huge advantage about speaking. So I grew up with 4 parents. My mother, my father, stepmother, they all were teachers at the same high school. And also, you got to realize how many lectures I've given here at Campbell in front of, a lecture hall of students. So, I was speaking 2, 3, 4 times a week. And, then when I get to go out and speak to these groups, like at the PGA show or whatever, I mean, I'm used to speaking every week. So
right.
The only difference in school is I can't swear. So
yeah, I've always wanted to ask you if you had any like formal training, or was it just built over experience?
It's God's gift, number one, and number two, it was my gift. Even though part of my illness was part of my gift,
right?
And then also experience. And I don't know. It's just, it's funny as I can't see myself speak. And what's funny is this is literally what happens. The PowerPoint is for the audience, not me.
Sure.
Okay. And what's typically, once I introduce myself and that first slide goes by, it's like I go into this complete different world, and just start speaking and go off on tangents, and usually I have to have some people bring me back.
Well, that's what the slides are for,
Right.
to keep you on point, right?
Exactly. But the thing is, and then I interact with the audience. That's the thing
Sure.
is, as I ask them questions and talk about things, and yeah, I get lost. It's kind of like, I get into the zone or the flow of it, and next thing you know, it's like we've gone over our time, and people are asking questions, and but I asked one of my friends from France. I said, what is it that I do different? They go, you just capture us. And I say, how do I do that? And they go, I don't know. You just capture our attention, and it's like you've got us. And I don't know where that comes from.
I just think it's a heart thing, bro. I think it's just you care about the information that you're going to give, and you care about the people you're talking to, and it comes through. Yeah,
like I said, it's a gift, and the biggest thing I've learned too about my speaking is it's not about me.
There you go.
It's about
selfless.
It's about the people that you're speaking to, and it can get pretty entertaining because I do the best Foley imitation. Sean even says I do it better than him.
Can you give us a little bit of that?
Well, I mean, I can. You got to see me do the walk.
More mannerisms
with the man bag, but I can. What's up? And he says, he goes, D, once you understand that your energy has an influence on your player's energy, you'll be a good coach, right? So, right?
That's pretty good.
And you got to have the Foley glasses that don't have prescriptions in them, by the way, folks.
Oh, no.
They're just fashion glasses,
just fashion.
Absolutely.
I love that guy.
Yeah, Foley, I'll tell you what. So let's talk about influences. I mean, obviously,
I was asking my next question is like, what other influences have you had in your career? That'd be a great question.
Most of them are full swing, but I mean, let's be honest. So I would say, obviously, influences with Jim Rusher was a golf pro in a retired golf pro in my town that owned a fishing pro shop, and we'd play golf together, and he showed me how to practice and made me watch him a lot and taught me how to hold the club. And then obviously I got, I've had so many coaches like Phil Ritson, myself when I played. Obviously Mac O'Grady, Andy Plummer, Mike Bennett. And then, Dr. Rob Neal has been an unbelievable mentor, and Phil Kenyon's been a great friend, and Brad Faxon, obviously, and just so many different people, and I definitely am a melting pot of a lot of different people.
Yeah, we all are.
We all are, right?
Yeah.
And we beg, borrow, and steal from everybody. And
yep.
And but it's I think mentorship is a very important thing, and I've been mentored and I've mentored others, and I've been influenced by so many people. I mean, Mike Hebron I worked with for a year, and Michael really got me thinking about how people learn and not all about mechanics. Mrs. Bell, I mean, gosh. I learned from Mrs. Bell is not just how to grip it and stand, but how to greet people at the door and how to make jokes with people and make them feel good about themselves when they're trying to learn a hard game.
Yes, the EQ stuff. It's so valuable.
Yeah. So, I think like Foley's got the best bedside manners you've ever seen, right? Butch Harmon, best bedside manners ever, and
right.
And I there's just so many different people. I do a great Pete Cowan imitation, and I do a great Ledbetter imitation. Dave Ledbetter, when he was hot, let me watch him teach for 12 hours at Pinehurst one day. Was up doing a corporate outing, and I just was mesmerized. I mean, we owe David Ledbetter a huge thanks for
absolutely
for making our business lucrative. So, but I've been just great players, great teachers, great folks. I mean, what a great game, and to have been a part of it. And it's funny, I did a podcast with Alan Burton this morning, and he called me a legend. And I said, dude, I'm not a legend, dude. I'm just an ordinary guy that's got to do a lot of cool stuff. And I really have. And I look forward to hopefully I'll be able to keep doing some more speaking gigs. And, I'm looking for that junior golfer that's the next, the next Tiger.
There you go.
I don't know that there'll be another Tiger, to be honest with you. He's simply amazing.
Probably not in our lifetime.
him winning the Masters at his age and after all he's been through is just, it's just incredible.
That was so ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't even like him on a personal note, but I just love to watch him play.
Sure.
And obviously I'll always be a Rosie fan. I mean, that's just going to happen. But there's so many good players. This game is in such a good spot. And who you got for the British this week?
Oh man, my dark horse was John Rahm. Actually, I don't know. I just had a feeling.
He's playing good, isn't he?
Yeah, he's really playing well, and he played well. I think at the Scottish last week, a couple weeks ago. Yeah. So I think he's a dark horse. There's so many though. I mean, I think Tommy Fleetwood's strong.
Love that guy
over there. Yeah, I mean, I just love his golf swing, and I mean, and I didn't get to watch any of it today, so I haven't seen the scores, but
Tommy was a great guy. He was wearing a headband one day at a practice round, and I said, "Dude, I'm going to call Nike up and get you like a half a dozen of LeBrons." And he started laughing, and the guy looks like Jesus. I mean, he does. He's give him a pair of sandals and a robe, and he'd be a Nazarene in a heartbeat.
Yeah, he was last year at the Wells. I hooked up with him and Phil and walked the back nine on the Wednesday Pro-Am, and he was just great. I mean, just super down to earth, great guy. I told him, I said, if anybody asks you, I'm your hairdresser.
There you go.
And he was just laughing.
Tommy's great. Rory's always been great to me. In practice rounds and stuff like that. Luke Donald's been precious. I mean, there's so many good people I've met out on the tour, and in this game. Yeah, British Open. I'll tell you what, Koepka, man.
He's tough.
Guys, he's the real deal, isn't he?
He is, and in the majors for sure. He just turns it up a notch that is just unheard of. It's crazy.
Yeah. I would like to see somebody new win it, but I have a feeling Koepka's going to be holding the jug.
Oh wow. Okay.
I mean, I just got that feeling again, or John Rahm. Those are good picks. But yeah, I'd like to see somebody new. I'd like to see Rosie holding that cup.
That wouldn't be bad.
He's at -2. He's not out of it.
Okay. So good start.
So, but anything else that we want to chat about? Are we good?
Yeah. Let's end with the question that I always ask everybody. And if you've listened to any of the shows, you know what's coming. But if you had a gigantic billboard that you could put a quote or a saying or anything on it that would get the message out to billions of people, what would you put on it and why?
Trust in the Lord, because you're not in control of your life. You never know what life's going to deal you, and He's the one you can trust.
Amen.
I'm telling you, and I'm not trying to be a religious freak. It's just that's the facts. I mean, He saved my life and my mind, and that's what that'd be the billboard I'd put out there. Is just you're not in control of your life, even if you try to be. You're not. There's something much bigger and better than you out there.
I love it, man. That's a perfect way to close. So how can folks get a hold of you, give out your platforms, your website? And I know your Flat Stick Academy that we didn't really get to touch on is an incredible certification as well. So give everybody the information and how they can reach out, and thank you for all that you've done.
Yeah, I mean, flatstickacademy.com. My email is orgolf@gmail.com. I'm old school. I don't like people texting me for lessons or emailing me for lessons. Please call me up because I want to have a personal conversation with you. 919-740-9616. I even said that today to a lesson. Guy texted me for a lesson, and I'm like, dude, can I call you? And so I can talk with you and find out what is it about putting that you need to work on or whatever, and go over our calendars. But yeah, I think personal interaction is important. So, but thank you so much for having me on the show. And
absolutely, man. Thanks so much for sharing. And it's again, I'm so happy that you're healthy and feeling good, and I can't wait to see what's next for you in your life.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how I talk at Open Forum in Orlando next year. So a lot of people might be disappointed, but things are good, and the biggest thing is getting your relationships right. And I'm so grateful that I have two beautiful daughters that they're just awesome, and they're just a blessing and a gift. Our children are such a blessing and a gift. So
absolutely. All right,
man.
Thanks so much for everything, and I will talk to you soon.
All right, bud. Thanks.
Yep.
Yep.
What's up, everyone? Thank you for hanging in there for another awesome episode of the Golf Guru Show. I am back here just with a couple of things before you jump off. First, big thank you to David for coming on the show and sharing his incredible knowledge about putting and coaching that I know will help all of you become better coaches, but also for being so honest and transparent about his life. I know that was very difficult for him to do. So thank you for that, David, for sharing that. Make sure you check out David's Flat Stick Academy. You can find that website at flatstickacademy.com or email him at orgolf@gmail.com. And you can also follow me on Twitter or Instagram at GolfGuruTV, and go check out my app, especially you golfers out there that want to get better, that can't reach me or work with me. I am excited to be able to help you from afar, and I think you'll enjoy it. So go check out that Golf Guru app at the App Store. You can also check out my website at golfgurutv.net, where you can find videos, articles, and more information on my teaching and coaching. If you have a question for the show or a comment, hit me up on the DM or email me at golfgurushow@gmail.com. Leave me an iTunes review. That would be awesome. Subscribe. Make sure you download the episode. That is very important. And as I always leave you with, make sure you study, make sure you practice, and make sure you teach, and then pass it on. I'll talk to you next time. Thanks so much for listening.